Let me introduce you properly. With this year's race for governor heating up, a question keeps coming up. Can the New Jersey GOP pull off a win? And to break it down, the guy on your screen, we're talking with Micah Rasmussen, who's the director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Micah, thanks for being with us. You heard the caller there. That's a good topic. I think you would probably be able to hit. Can you address what the caller just talked about?
Oh boy, if I could, I would bottle it. So New Jersey, you're correct that there are some federal requirements in place, but there's also state requirements. Our state constitution specifically says that towns can't zone in a way that prohibits poor people from living on the wrong side of the tracks or the right side of the tracks. Right. And so there's been this Mount Laurel litigation for, as you pointed out, Ken, 50 years. And there have been various iterations on how towns have met their obligations over the years. I think we're now entering the 5th round of obligations. And each round, the state determines what the need is. And I don't think we can really dispute that there is a massive need for affordable housing in New Jersey, right? We all feel that the market pressures that are going on. If we're selling our home, we see it in the price that's reflected. If we're buying a home, if we are unfortunate enough to be buying a home, we certainly understand how the market is behaving. There's just not enough housing in the state, and so certainly towns don't like the obligations that they have to build dozens or hundreds of units, and there are big changes going on in towns. But the question is, what do you do about it then, right? So this last round of affordable housing litigation did bring the first surge in units statewide that's been built. So we have between 5,000 and 7,000 additional units across the state, and those are places for people to live in the state. And unquestionably, towns are upset about that. That you're right, the caller's right that there's pressures on the schools specifically, and they are also right that that's not something that the state is really addressing. When they say you have an obligation to build, they don't say how can you make up those additional costs. So they fall on the property taxpayer, the individual property taxpayer, to pay those additional students, pay for those additional students and classrooms and teachers that are required.
Micah, if I could just jump in really quickly, don't they have the option?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're great. You're fine. Please,
I'm giving like 50 years of history, but please,
I appreciate it. I'm glad. You know what? Because I only moved to New Jersey in 2024. So I'm sorry, 2004, not 2024. Wow.
Okay.
2004. So I'm not a lifer in New Jersey. I mean, the time flies. But this is true in New York too. They had the exact same circumstance. Anywhere you accepted federal dollars, you had the consequence, if you will, of dealing with low-income housing. But today, low-income housing, or moderate affordable housing, as it's called, it's not just about, I think people have that image in their minds of people who are homeless or drug addicts.
Yeah.
We're talking about young couples. We're talking about people who want their first home. It's not necessarily, as years ago, we picture the person on the other side of the track, so to say. That's a lot of people today.
That's really important.
Right?
Point. Absolutely.
And rather, just to hit this, and you could, I just want to, and you could take this.
No, you're
too,
right.
That the communities also allow for veterans housing, so that if you think it's going to cost a fortune because of school districts and things like that, and people coming in with young kids, the local communities can build housing for veterans, and now you're not dealing so much with the schools, and still satisfy the obligation. So there are other ways around this, right?
There are, yeah. There's a town near me, Robbinsville, that has this Project Freedom, which is exactly what you describe it to be, and it's in other towns as well. And you're right, Ken. We have to change our view of what this is, and we have to change our view on who this is for. We can all identify with the fact that the market is pricing people out right now. We all hear stories, if not ourselves, about people who are making offers of $10, $20, $30, $50, $100,000 over the asking price and still getting priced out of the market. So, this affordable housing, there is housing for the very, very low income. There's housing for not so low income, moderate income. And so there are different levels. And it does look very different than what we would have called years ago projects. That's not really what it is. In fact, in Long Branch. We're probably all familiar with Pier Village and the beautiful development along the ocean. Well, their affordable housing, which is, a couple blocks from there, is mimicked to look like that. It's not exactly like that, but it has that look and feel. The idea is to give people a sense of ownership, a sense of pride, want to keep up that beautiful new neighborhood that's been built there. And it is a very successful program in that community. It's an integral part of their community that they've found a way to integrate with their town.
I mean, that's brilliant. And when you give people that start, when you get people into the system so that they feel included, then the outcome is going to be different, right? And when people feel like
Absolutely,
they're
yeah.
part of the community, as opposed to you stay over there, you're not equivalent to us. When you give people that little hand up, just let them be part of the community and feel like part of it, you will see a very different outcome later. The kids will be part of the community. They're not going to grow up feeling like outcasts. It's a whole
We
different
yeah,
approach. So
we
yeah,
don't want
I think this
stigmas.
is brilliant.
Yeah, we don't want
Absolutely. And this is
stigmas.
the
Yeah,
way to end it.
yeah,
I'm with you
yeah.
100%. And by the way, I've evolved on this because I pictured 20 years ago exactly what you said, the projects. And I think everybody fears it. My father was raised in the projects in Yonkers. So, that's what I envisioned. And I think we've got to get rid of that. If we don't want projects, we don't build projects. How
We don't
about
build
that?
them.
There's a way to
We can
do it,
decide
right?
what we want to build. In fact, some towns meet their obligation by saying, okay, developer, you want to build a neighborhood of houses that look like every other house. A couple of the houses in that neighborhood need to be designated for affordable housing. So you'd never know if you drove down the
Right.
block which ones are and which ones aren't. It's really up to the town. You're exactly right. The state is saying, here's your obligation. They're not saying, here's how you meet it. You decide as a town what makes sense for you and how to meet it.
This is great. Mike, and now our executive producer Gerald's like, okay, we had all these questions for Micah. We didn't touch any of them. Let me get on this. We have about 5 minutes left, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Back in 2021, Republican Jack Ciattarelli came very close to unseating Governor Murphy. Obviously, I mean, we
Hmm.
went to bed thinking it was going to be Governor Ciattarelli in the morning, and then we woke up and we saw that no, they counted more votes, and that wasn't the case. So there were about 84,000 votes that
That's
Governor
right.
Murphy won by. So, how significant was that razor thin margin in shaping the outlook for this year's race, considering now that we have 145,000 more Republicans who have voted? Oh, I'm sorry, who have registered. I mean, the Democrats still far outnumber Republicans in the state, but 145,000 increase is a very substantial increase at a time when the Democrats have now lost about 41,000 registered voters.
That's exactly right. So you have a swing of almost 200,000 votes, registered voters, an improvement in the electorate, almost to the tune of 200,000 voters toward the Republicans since Ciattarelli lost by 84,000 votes. So that suggests to me, at least, and this is the way I frame this was, I'm asked all the time, do Republicans have a chance in this race? The answer is absolutely yes. Their chances are improved since that election of 4 years ago, and that was so close. They are even further improved today. The climate is even better for them today.
Yeah, especially, I mean, in November, it came ridiculously close. And I say that because we have traditionally thought of New Jersey as a somewhat blue state. You can't, I mean, we have David Wildstein on all the time. And whenever I say New Jersey's a blue state, he goes, well, it's not a blue state, it's more purple
Yeah,
because we've gone,
yeah,
it's like a
yeah.
pendulum. We've gone back and
That's
forth.
exactly it.
So,
Yes, yes.
right.
Now pendulum is an important term, and it's a good term to remember because we are in the middle of probably the best climate for Trump. If there is a honeymoon period, he is in it now, and he may or may not be in it come November, right? I think
Right.
there's a lot of evidence that his approval rating is falling back down to earth. He's doing a lot of controversial things. He's taking on a lot of sacred cows. And so you get that sugar high when you're first elected, and everybody says that they're, want the new president to do well. How he is doing in November will be a reflection on his party's chances in November. So New Jersey is always the state that has the first post presidential election midterm, if you
Mhm.
will, even though it's only 1 year into the term. And so we're going to get a sense for his popularity here. One important difference between now and 2021, in 2021, Democrats were the ones who were defending the White House and the White House's policies. Now it's going to be Republicans that are doing that.
Yeah. What would you say then for Republicans? What do you think? would be what could help push them over? And what do you think they can do to screw it all up?
They have to lean into these new voters. They have to do what they can to motivate as many Trump voters to come out again this year as they possibly can. I think that's the formula. So if those Trump voters, who, let's face it, a lot of them are presidential only voters. They're not voters who vote in off year elections. That's why Republicans have done well when Trump is on the ballot, not so well when he's not on the ballot. So they've got to figure out how to motivate their voters to come out. They've got more of them to lean into, but they've got to figure out how to make the appeal to Trump voters to say, hey, come out and elect a Republican governor, and you'll see some of those changes that you like that are happening in Washington may be happening in New Jersey as well.
If I had a dollar, Micah, for every time I heard people say, I only vote in presidential elections.
Right.
What? What are you doing?
Exactly.
This is why, I mean, in New York State, people complain that the people, and I talk about New York a lot because that's where I was born and raised. My family's mostly in New York. They complain about these 20 somethings who make up the state legislature. Like, I think 80% of the people in the House and the Assembly and the Senate in New York State are like between 20 and 30. They're kids.
Right.
They're far leftists. These are not, the governor tries to like wheel them in like they're children because they go socialist tangents, and she can't pull them back. These are the people who want to defund the police still in the state of New York. They still don't get it. It's like, all right, that was 5 years ago, guys. Cut it.
So I'll tell you something, Ken.
But that's because people don't show up and vote for them.
That's a
because
very
it's
good point.
They only get 7% of the voters.
That's a very, very good point. You have a completely different electorate in non-presidential years than you have in presidential years. That's a big part of it. There's other things too, and this doesn't necessarily fit into today's topic, but New York has a full-time legislature. They pay a full-time salary. I don't remember what the amount is right now. But in New Jersey, we don't have that. We have a part-time salary and a part-time legislature. When you pay a full wage, you are getting people who can afford to work in that wage and for that amount of money. Here in New Jersey, you probably can't work full-time in legislature. There are a couple who do, but they're mostly retired. And so you get a different life cycle of people who are running for the legislature. But yeah, in New York, and there's a couple of other states, Wisconsin, California, you get people who are sort of professional career legislators who can afford to do just this, and you get a more partisan legislature in some cases.
See, I did not know that. I did not realize, and I should know that. I'm ashamed I didn't know that, but I'm glad I was educated right now that New Jersey's. I knew that many of the state legislators have other jobs, even other elected
Yes.
offices, but I didn't realize that it was only technically considered a part-time job. Thank you for
Yes.
clarifying that for me. I appreciate it.
And it's just little things like
see,
that make a difference.
right. Certainly. And do you see, and we got about 30 seconds left, do you see President Trump coming to New Jersey to campaign for whoever the Republican nominee is, except for our good senator who's in the race, who doesn't like Trump?
Well, that's a
But
good
other
question.
than that,
If
yes,
it
do you
was,
see that making a difference?
Let's say he were to endorse Spady. Spady would go all out to get him here. He would absolutely want him here. Jack, maybe he's trying to ride that line a little bit, right? It really depends on the popularity, but it's going to depend person by person. Democrats would probably get very excited about that. The closer we get to November, the more his numbers fall. They'd say, yeah, bring him in.
That's fascinating. And that's a very good point, because what we see right now may not be the case in 6-8 months. We'll see where it goes. And traditionally,
Yep.
there's a honeymoon period, right? And the honeymoon period kind of wanes up. The excitement goes away. So, all right, Mike, I could talk to you all day, but I know that the producers.
Me too, Ken.
I appreciate you every time you come on. Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks
Come back
for having
again.
me.
You bet. I appreciate it.
Sounds good.